Okay, you guys are all recorded on video. So just take note that this whole presentation seminar submit will be recorded throughout the whole time. Yeah, so if you are not comfortable with it, just keep your camera off. But if it's convenient, right, can you guys turn on your camera so that we can actually see who you are and so that we can say hi to you nicely? Awesome, awesome. So one thing that would be awesome for us to tell you, right, is that if you are in Singapore, we actually have an ongoing discount because of our Dexafit Summit 2022. So if you were to send us a message on our WhatsApp or drop us an email at hello@dexafitasia.com, you'll be able to get 22% off all of our a la carte services. Just simply use the promo code SUBMIT22 and you'll be able to get that through. Yeah, our staff will be able to arrange that for you. Yeah. So moving on, I'm really going to just talk about the order of events today. Of course, right now we are already opening the whole session. And then later on, our first speaker of the day would be Adam Cadela. Adam is our founder of Dexafit. He's all the way in US right now, and he has kindly taken his time out to speak to us today about really the history and what Dexafit is all about. So his title is going to be What Story Does Our Body Tell? So Adam really is going to talk to us about the history and the about of Dexafit itself. I'm not going to spoil the details and I'll just let him tell you about it later on. Yeah, after him, I'll be talking to you about the Dexafit journey. So the Dexafit journey really is about when you come into a Dexafit center, what can you expect? What kind of tests do we offer? And what kind of benefits and results do you see? And why is this really important to you? Yeah, and after me, then Brandon will take over. So Brandon really talks to us about the future of Dexafit. He's going to be talking about his title with because earlier is better, but really a lot of these things that he's going to be telling us about is what Dexafit is going on right now, what we're doing, what kind of innovations are we trying to create, and how can that really benefit you, me, and everybody else. So it's really, really exciting. If you're excited about all of our topics, please type excited so that we know that you're excited just as we are to share with you today. We're going to put in our 100% just so that we can make sure that, you get your 100%. So as far as we are concerned, we're going to put in our best effort to make sure that you're happy. So we want to make sure that this evening is really, really awesome. So the one thing that we know there's a few house cleaning rules that we have placed in to make sure that everyone is comfortable and happy to be part of this session, right? So the first thing that I need to I probably will share with you is to really talk to us, engage with us, right? So if as much as possible, just type in with us, engage with us, because really as presenters, we feed off your energy, and the more energy you can give to us, the more energy we'll be able to take, and therefore we can give you a better presentation, better submit, and therefore we'll all be excited together. Cool. The second thing is, if it's convenient, once again, turn on your videos, let us see your face, let us be able to know who you are, so that we can actually say hi to you. Yeah. And of course, lastly, keep your mic on mute. Once you enter this room, you should already be on mute, I believe. Yeah, so that shouldn't be too big an issue. All right, so if you want to work with us, maybe you're in Singapore, you want to consider how do I partner with Dexafit Asia? How do I actually work with us in terms of partnerships and whatnot? We actually have ongoing trainer support schemes going on. We have ongoing partnerships going on that may be beneficial to your company, right? So yeah, if you are one of these people, you're a business owner, entrepreneur, maybe you own a corporate center, you want to make sure that your people are getting healthier, or maybe you're a fitness center and you're looking to partner with us so that you can give better services or add more value to your clients, just drop us an email at hello@dexafitasia.com, address it to Jimmy if you're going for the corporates, address it to me, who is James, if you are going for the fitness. Awesome. Hi, Shak. Hi, Shak. All right. So I'm going to introduce our speaker for today. The first speaker will be Adam Cadela. He will be talking about the Dexafit story. So Adam creates Dexafit's long-term growth vision, product roadmap, and strategy. As part of the process, he partners with medical and fitness industry leaders to launch innovative technology platforms that provides clients with data, inspiration, and guidance to improve their health, achieve their fitness goals, and transform their lives. Adam developed his expertise in technology as head of FX trading at Eagle 7, a global financial trading and technology firm based in Chicago. Among other activities, he designed proprietary software and trading strategies for arbitrage, market making, and discovering hidden liquidity in the market. a lifelong athlete, Adam was starting middle linebacker and captain of the Northwestern University football team, where he first learned how to optimize performance using cutting-edge technology and resources. So if you guys are excited to listen to what Adam have to say, type Adam. So meanwhile, let me just unmute Adam. Adam, are you unmuted? Awesome. All right.
I am.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Is this your slides?
The slides are there. Thank you,
Awesome.
James.
All
I
right.
appreciate the
Let's get going.
introduction, and hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening for you. I'm going to apologize in advance if you hear a dog bark or a cat. It's early morning here, and I have a 1-year-old sleeping, so I'm keeping him corralled. Anyways, wanted to introduce myself. As James alluded to, my background comes from trading, but also sports, and Dexafit was kind of merged my two interests before opening it. So, as a former athlete, when I was playing, they would always, every offseason, they would make sure that they had the best data, or at least at the time, the best data about, our body composition, our fitness level, and do everything they could to improve our performance on the field. So it was something that I was always doing, was just testing myself, seeing what I could, seeing how I was improving and how I could be better. And then when I was done playing, I realized some of these tools were not really easy to find. And that's where kind of the opportunity for Dexafit came in, with a former teammate of mine who'd played in the NFL. He also had access to a lot of high-end testing, biometric testing to, in the offseason, a lot of professional teams were using this, researchers, and we felt there was an opportunity to make this more accessible and available to just everyday people, amateur athletes, anybody who's just looking to feel better and look better. Around the same time, when we were opening Dexafit, I was also misdiagnosed with a thyroid condition that turned out to be an autoimmune issue that I did not know about. And there were a lot of things I should have been doing if it had been diagnosed correctly. And the way that I was able to eventually get the correct diagnosis was I had to go out on my own. I had to find other doctors that were out there, get my own lab work. It was a very expensive process. It was not easy to do. There was no really roadmap to do that, to find somebody that could help me figure out what was wrong with me. And so that's where, again, I felt another opportunity with Dexafit was to democratize access for people that were interested in doing this on their own and not being trapped in a paradigm to go and be at the mercy of, the insurance industry or their doctor. And so that's where I want to start, James. If you could go to the next slide with a quote. This is probably my favorite testimonial in all the years that I've been doing Dexafit. I learned more in 20 minutes with Dexafit than I did in 20 years visiting my doctor. MetLife even reduced my insurance premium after reviewing my results. So what do you think about that quote right there? I learned more in 20 minutes than in 20 years. And I know from just talking with Dexafit users over the years and my own personal experience that this is something that a lot of people could relate to. Could you go to the next slide, please? So we're going to talk about Rod, who gave us this testimonial. And I'll tell you a little bit about Rod. He was, I think he was probably in his 40s at the time. He was in good shape. He was definitely in really good shape. I believe his DEXA scan was maybe around 10%. He had a pretty good VO2 max test as well. But if his BMI, he was obese, which, as he was explaining to us, when he did his life insurance, that's one of the metrics they looked at. And for years before he found Dexafit, he was using weight as his guide, which can be very misleading, along with a few other, what we call noisy health and fitness measurements, something like steps from a wearable device, any of that data that's not necessarily been medically validated and useful to understand if you're actually making good progress. So for example, Rod would tell us how, he sees his weight on the scale not changing, which can be frustrating if your goal is weight loss. Are you losing fat or are you losing muscle? You don't know. And oftentimes we see people that they feel like they're plateauing, the weight's not changing, and then they get a DEXA scan and they eventually learn, hey, this is great we actually lost fat, gained lean mass. Those people, though, unfortunately, are still considered obese by the BMI. And so that's where we really, for Rod's case, it's not unique. This is a very common problem that people have, especially in an industry that's utilizing BMI and weight as some of the major metrics that you're using to track health, as I said, which can be misleading. For example, something like the BMI, which is over 200 years old, and it was never actually meant to be a general measure of bodybuilder fat, just a population level indicator to see how health was. Go to the next slide, James. Oh, I think we went, oh, there you go. Now, Rod with Dexafit. So when Rod came in, he did his DEXA scan, what we call it a cardiorespiratory fitness test, which I'm guessing most people on here are somewhat familiar with their technology. So I'm not going to go in too much detail about it because James has a great presentation after me that will go explain kind of all the testing and show you the results you get. But our goal when we opened Dexafit was we want to look, what is one of the most important things you could track about yourself? What is something that almost everybody cares about? Well, it's how far from death are you? So let's figure out a way we can actually track our preventative health risk, even our longevity with medical grade technology. And that's the difference with Dexafit testing, that Rod, using it now, is able to learn about himself. Body composition distribution specifically, which is more important than just body fat percent alone or total weight. Your VO2 max cardiorespiratory fitness, which is considered the top indicator of all-cause mortality. These two tests alone, Brandon might later on will probably agree with me, and these are probably two of the most important tests you could do that tell you 80–90% of your preventative health risks and whether or not you are improving your health and fitness level or not, beyond anything else that's out there. Let's go to the next slide. Why did MetLife care about this? So, as I explained earlier, many insurance companies, even doctors, are using these tools like BMI, which are very old and not very reliable. MetLife cared because if you look at the medical literature, you're going to see that DEXA, body composition, as well as a VO2 max test, both are utilized on FDA-approved systems here. They're considered the gold standard for body composition health and cardiorespiratory fitness. But more importantly, they tell you a lot about your chronic disease risk, among many other diseases, including some cancers. It's decades of research behind it, but more importantly, it's just the level of detail that you get from a DEXA scan, which again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about, but James will talk about later. I will talk about an example that really resonated with me early on after starting Dexafit, were two clients that came in on the same day. These two clients on the same day, both males, both came in at around 10%, about 9–10% body fat. So on the surface, you'd say, hey, that's really good. Wow, you're 9–10% body fat. If you go to the gym and if somebody asks you, hey, what's your body fat? Oh, wow, that's really good. You must know what you're doing. Well, one of those guys, I will say, you would want to listen to what they were doing at the gym. This guy was very sharp. He dialed in his diet. He had a great fitness routine. If you looked at his body composition distribution, and this is the important part, his body fat percent, 10%, his body composition distribution, though, showed he had 0 pounds of visceral fat, a very healthy T-score, which is your skeletal health, almost perfect lean mass asymmetry, just carried a good amount of lean mass for his frame. So you can tell this, all in all, this guy was very healthy. The other guy, on the other hand, same total body fat percent, about 3.5, 4 pounds of visceral fat, which, as a reminder, is the fat that's stored around your organs. That is the one that is most correlated to your chronic disease risk, among many others. He also had a pretty low, he's on the lower side for his T-score for skeletal health. So you could see this guy, again, what's considered a healthy total body fat percent, in reality was likely pre-diabetic, if not diabetic. At this time, we did not have some of our disease detection tools, which Brandon's going to be talking about later on in the presentation, where we would, today, we'd actually be able to tell him if, whether or not he was diabetic or pre-diabetic based upon his DEXA scan. But at the time, again, this was something that was very revealing to me after scanning so many different people, just how powerful a tool DEXA is. Let's go to the next slide. So I know for those that have had Dexafit testing, especially in Asia, you are also familiar with some of our other testing. So why did we include these other tests, which include a resting metabolic rate test, your 3D body scan, and lab testing? We'll go ahead and talk about your resting metabolic rate first. So when we originally opened Dexafit, our three primary tests were a DEXA scan, a VO2 max test, and an RMR test. Why was that? Well, we called it the three-legged stool of your health: your body composition health, cardiorespiratory fitness, metabolic health. These are three things that we're pretty confident that 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, all of us are still going to care about our body composition, cardiorespiratory health, and our metabolic health. It's just some of the technologies we use to test those may change. So that's why we added the RMR. It complements specifically your body composition as well as your VO2 max test, in the sense it tells you exactly what is your resting metabolic rate. How many calories do you burn at rest? More importantly, beyond that, it also shows you how efficiently you're burning, fat versus carbohydrates, or a mixture of both. We have many clients that are interested in that metric, because maybe they're trying to go into ketosis and following the ketogenic diet. So it's just another useful way to see how your metabolism is changing on that diet. Another important thing to do with your RMR test is, if you're losing weight, it's very important to know, all right, alongside a DEXA scan, am I undershooting with my calories every day? And that's forcing my body to lose precious lean mass. So it's, again, these tools are very complementary in how we're using that. The next test we utilize is a 3D body scan. If DEXA shows us everything that's going on the inside, where we're storing lean mass, fat mass, our bone mass, the 3D body scan shows you what's going on the outside. It maps the surface of your body in 3 dimensions, reveals, it's a fun way to really track and see how your body's changing, not only on the inside, but also on the outside. And then finally, which in Dexafit Asia currently is not offering lab testing out of their facility, but over here in the United States, we do offer a host of labs, different custom panels that we've created, along with individual markers that you're able to order without having to go your traditional route through your doctor. We will be soon launching within the app the ability to integrate any past lab data that you have. This way you can analyze it alongside your Dexafit data, your DEXA scan, your VO2 max, your RMR, and all of that. And we'll be providing more insights about your specific results. So let's go to the next slide. So Dexafit then and now. So I'm just going to jump in and tell you just a little bit about our history and where we're going, and then we'll obviously cover more of that later on in the presentation. So as a reminder, DEXA and cardiopulmonary exercise systems have been around for decades. First, the CPET came around in the 70s, DEXA in the 80s, and honestly, through the 80s, the 90s, and the probably early 2000s, DEXA was primarily used as a bone densitometer for skeletal health. Identify whether or not you have osteoporosis or osteopenia. It was only utilized in mostly research settings for body composition, where it was used for different studies to just track how people's body composition health was changing. Around the 2000s, when it became the gold standard for body composition assessments, it was started to gain popularity among a lot of professional organizations. A lot of NFL National Football League teams over here, sports teams. Usually elite athletes are kind of the early adopters of a lot of new technologies, and eventually they kind of trickle down to everybody else, since it's their job to figure out what to do to improve their health and fitness level. So that's kind of how the Dexafit story began. Was as I said earlier, a former teammate of mine at Northwestern. We reached out, alma mater, built out a sports science program at Northwestern, which is when sports science was starting to become pretty popular, and that's using data to improve an athlete's performance. It's also around the time that biohacking started to get popular, personalized health. If anybody's familiar with Tim Ferriss and his 4-Hour Body book, He's actually a client at our San Francisco office, where he recommends getting a DEXA scan. That's where our story really began. Was we reached out to a lot of top programs to learn what they were doing, and DEXA and specifically VO2 max testing were two of the tests that kept popping up as what they were doing with their athletes in the off season and throughout the season to improve their performance. Well, unfortunately, it was really hard to find this testing here in the United States. You could get it, it's just it was not easy to do, and it was usually very expensive. And so that's where we saw an opportunity, was to, at the time it was, we wanted to create our own high-end sports lab for everyday people to come in and get access to this testing. And it was a part-time passion project for us both. It was not full-time, but based on the adoption and the traction and our growth, especially more and more people reaching out to us wanting to open up facilities just like ours and take advantage of the work we had done, we were blown away and just really happy to help as much as we can. And that's what led to our growth. Throughout all of this, though, we recognized an opportunity, and that's how I met Brandon, who'll be speaking later on. He and I shared the same vision. We had the same idea of what we could do with the data that we were collecting at Dexafit. And more importantly, we could improve the experience for our customers by going from paper to digital. Because at the time, we were at the mercy of the manufacturer report for these systems, which was not very user-friendly. It didn't go into too much detail, didn't provide a lot of insights about specific metrics like your preventative health risks. It just gave you a total body fat percent number, or it just gave you the visceral fat number, which to most people who have never heard about visceral fat, they'll forget about it as soon as they leave, and then they'll either be calling you, asking, or looking it up on their own, which again is not a very user-friendly experience. So that was in 2019, we launched our first version of our Dexafit AI app. And so the simple objective with that was, all right, let's integrate all of this testing data that we're collecting, so individuals don't need to leave with just paper reports that they put in a folder. Now everything that we explained to them at the office and that they saw is now on their phone 24/7, and it provides detailed insights, easy to understand, nice visualizations, and it's a great way to track your progress. From there, we also rolled out what we call our longevity score. Why did we roll out the longevity score? That was, again, steering people away from gravitating towards just total body fat percent alone, which, as I explained earlier, can be very misleading, not the most helpful metric. And let's give them something that, honestly, I think almost everybody cares about, is what's our longevity? How healthy are we? How far from death are we? And so that's let's fast forward now to 2022, where I can't believe it's 2022 saying that, but we've collected billions of data points from the various DEXA CPET systems that we have out there in the world, along with lab tests, and we're improving our AI now to detect even more chronic diseases, coronary artery disease, diabetes, and hopefully more in the future. So let's go to the next slide, James. So I'll just quickly go through kind of the Dexafit journey. James will go into more detail here shortly. So what we like to say is, when you come into Dexafit, you're getting effect data. And what does effect data mean? So you have causal data. Cause data is, what are you doing to cause an effect on your body composition, cardiorespiratory fitness, and metabolism? Those are the three things that you're looking to change. What's causing that change? Those would be things like how you're eating, how you're working out, how you're sleeping, all of these things that wearables can track for you, or your weight on, things like that. So that's what we want to start our journey on, is like, let's get a baseline, let's get a benchmark. Where are we? What has the effect been of our lifestyle on these important metrics of our health? Next, when you come in after you get your testing done, which in total can be anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour to get all of this information. When you leave, you're going to have your longevity score. You're going to have all of that data from the testing to use now. Some professionals, a lot of our Dexafit partners, and I know James can, they work with professionals that can take your Dexafit data and help build you out a program that's personalized to you, not a cookie cutter approach, but one that's based off maybe your lean mass, your metabolic rate, things like that, as well as your VO2 max. Yes, yes, Dr. Ryan, GPS for your health and lifestyle. I like that. So next, we're going to compare it. You can compare it within the app. All right, let's see all my habits. How are they affecting my body? From there, we'll be rolling out some more tools for professionals to help with their clients that they send to get Dexafit testing, among many other features coming down the line. And then, and then finally, you just keep repeating that process. More often than not, we see on average people coming back 3, 4, 5 months. That's kind of the sweet spot where you don't want to come in for Dexafit testing and then wait a year. Another couple jumps out to mind that came in 1 year. They were very excited. It was an older couple. They had a plan they wanted to follow, Body by Science. I remember it vividly. They were going to follow a new diet. I didn't see them for a long time. And then 1 year later, they showed up for the 1 year anniversary. They were so happy to be coming back just to see how their progress had been, because they'd been following their plan to a T. And unfortunately for me, I had to break the news to them that when I gave them the results, their body fat had gone up, they'd increased fat mass and lost lean mass. So clearly that's not to say that the program they were doing does not work. It obviously has worked for some people. It just didn't work for them. And I remember when they left, they go, all right, we're going to see you a lot sooner this time. Because again, they want to make sure you come back. You want to make sure you give yourself enough time to let whatever it is you're doing work. But at the same time, you don't want to wait too long in case it's not working. You're able to pivot to something that does. So that's in a nutshell, how, from the very beginning, how we envisioned the Dexafit journey for people and providing them the tools that they need to achieve the change that they're hoping. And we're continuing to roll out more tools, and really appreciate everybody for being a part of the Dexafit journey. James?
All right. Thank you, Adam, for sharing so much with us. How many of you think that Adam has shared really valuable knowledge over here? Say thank you to Adam. And right now we're going to open up to Q&A for Adam. Does anybody have any questions to ask Adam? You can ask him things about his journey. He might have a personal story that he might be willing to share. You can ask him about how the journey has been. Yeah, things like that. All right, Adam, you're getting a lot of attention. You feel like a celebrity.
Yeah.
Gotta say that your slides look really awesome, and Canva's doing a lot of miracles for us these days. Okay, looks like we're not getting any questions at this point. Thank you, Adam, so much. Thank you so much for your.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insights. It's been amazing.
Yep, no problem.
Okay. So next up, I will be sharing about the Dexafit journey itself. Oh, Adam, you have a question. From your experience, what are the many behavior that is beneficial from Ravinder Singh? Adam, you're muted. Let's see if I can help you with that. There we go.
All right. Well, thank you. That is a great question. So I'll go ahead and break that down into two parts. One from my own personal experience, specifically coming from an uphill battle with an autoimmune disease, specifically it's Hashimoto's. So again, I'm basing my answer on my own personal experience. If there's one thing I can tell you from Dexafit and the thousands of tests that I've seen and clients come through here, a lot of different things will work for people. People doing almost opposite things will see success from each other. So I don't want to, everything that I say is not necessarily a bias towards this is the best way for everybody. This was the best way for me based upon my own research over the years. And, it really started from, the biggest part was when I was working in Chicago at the trading firm, I ran the trading desk. I worked a night shift. I was trading European and Asian hours. And so I was, at the time, I was in my mid 20s or so, and was completely ignorant to what kind of effects circadian rhythm has on your health. And I decided, oh, I'm going to start working the night shift. Okay, I'll go to the gym and work out late at night around 11 o'clock. I was still lifting heavy, like I was playing football. And then I'd go in and I'd put on a pot of coffee and start working, and then I'd go home and try to sleep. But then on the weekends, I'd still go out with my friends. So I'd try to sleep, late at night and go up during the day. That was really pouring gasoline on fire with my autoimmune condition that I had. So one of the biggest things that helped me was really focusing in on my circadian rhythm and letting my body know when it was daylight out and when it was nighttime. So there's a couple ways that I did that. One was I tried making sure I did not miss breakfast. Missing breakfast is a great way to really let your body know, okay, it's morning. I set the rhythm for the day. Also seeing morning sunlight, getting outside, exposing your eyes and your skin to the sun, letting your body sense that it is light, it is day. From there, when evening would roll around, it would be protecting my eyes from artificial light sources that could mimic the sun, which would be telling my body specifically that, hey, it's not night, it's day, which would be suppressing your melatonin. Blue light from lights can suppress your melatonin level for it. So somebody like me that was dealing with an autoimmune condition, it was really important that I make sure my body knew when it was night, it was night, when it was day, it was day. And so to this day, these are some lighter blue blockers, but at night I'll wear these red tinted blue blockers if I'm watching TV or on my phone. During the day, later in the evening, I'll wear these right here, which still protect a little bit, mitigate the effect of blue light, which again, blue light is only found during the day in the sun. So in the evening, I want to avoid that. So I found that as soon as I adopted, I really dialed in my circadian, letting my body know what time of day it was, my thyroid condition improved significantly. Along with then on the dietary front, somebody with my conditioning, avoiding certain foods, gluten and dairy were the two biggest culprits for me. So dietary effects are also very important, but I'd say it's when you're eating is important. And when you're eating has probably been the most helpful for me over even what I've been eating. So not skipping breakfast and trying not to eat late at night. Eating too late at night can also send a bad signal to my body, and that affected my health. So again, everybody is different. These are just some of the tricks that have helped me. In terms of Dexafit, what we have seen, we do have a lot of data about what people are doing. And some of the more popular things, intermittent fasting has had some success based upon self-reported journals with the Dexafit data. I would say a pescatarian diet has also proven to be very interesting to see with longevity scores. Those that describe themselves as pescatarian, meaning predominantly a fish-based diet, have had higher longevity scores than everybody else. So those are just two kind of little nuggets that we've picked up on over the years. But in the end, everybody is different. So I encourage them to really go and try to learn as much as they can and try different things, and make sure, more importantly, you're tracking it to make sure it's actually working. Because as I said, there's a lot of things that a popular blogger, podcaster might say is the best way to do something. You go in and you do the test, and if your body's not improving off of it, you can't be stuck because that guy said or that girl said it was the best way to do it. It's not the best way for you. Probably you got to continue to experiment and find what does work.
Awesome. Sounds like in the end of the day, we do need to look into a self-exploration journey. All right, Adam, we have a few more questions coming in for you. Garrett asks, Dexa gives further insight for greater inputs. I see this being similar to other products on the market like DNA profiling. Do you see Dexafit journey being complementary to DNA profiling as well? Or can Dexafit scan provide sufficient information on its own for an individual to work with?
So we actually have, we've worked with some DNA profiling companies over here in the United States, and we have had a lot of clients that have used their services. So it is definitely very complementary. So I will say with the DNA profiling, that's, even though they'll make a recommendation based upon your genetics. And I've actually done it in the past, and based on my genetics, they'll say there's certain types of exercises I should do better, certain types of foods. Now, again, it's complementary in the sense of your DNA is not necessarily, it's a blueprint. It's not necessarily, you're not going to be stuck to whatever they say, but it does give you a path to start from. But you're going to want to use Dexafit testing to find out if those recommendations are actually working for you, because there is something you can express. But I'm sure some of you are familiar with the science of epigenetics and turning on, turning off specific, genetic traits. And there are things you can do with your environment to affect your health. And that's where I would say it is complementary. And we've had people that have used the product. They've used the workout system, and they've followed the diet, and then they've tracked it with Dexafit to make sure it actually is working. So I would say it is definitely complementary, but again, don't feel like it is the only way and it is the best way to do it. It is just a way to experiment with. I see another one. Can you give us any examples of professional athletes utilizing Dexafit? Yeah, one of our advisors and good friend of mine, he's with the San Francisco 49ers. He's the head of athlete health and performance. And so basically he oversees all team doctors, strength coaches, trainers. And what they're doing is they're using Dexafit testing in their athletes throughout the season. There's any number of applications to use with an athlete where it's, you're planning out maybe, how much you're eating, making sure there are no asymmetries, especially if you're coming off an injury, or if you're an athlete and you want to, I see somebody asked about like a golfer. There have been a lot of use cases of golfers using DEXA. The biggest part is the asymmetry piece and ensuring proper development as well, identifying the best distribution of lean mass to fat mass. So again, I mean, you're going to find this information. Everybody has a body, and everybody cares about their body composition distribution. And so I think monitoring that, you're going to be able to use that as an athlete to figure out what is best for you, and to make sure you're developing, the right amount of lean mass and the right distribution.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think that's all the questions we have for you today. You have answered really well for all of them. Yeah, I really like the part where you were sharing about how DEXA really can complement with DNA profiling. And just for everyone to know, when you're using a DNA profiling, it's really like a trend analysis per se, but when you're using Dexafit services, very often how I like to see it is like it's a photo snap of your data. So where are you right now? Whereas with DNA profiling, it's more like these are what your genes are saying that your trend analysis might look like. So perhaps that might be something worth looking into or worth thinking as part of your self-exploration journey in terms of your fitness and health with Dexafit. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Adam, so much for the insightful session. Okay, so next up, I will be speaking with you. Hi, once again, I am James. So I am the head of education with Dexafit Asia. I operate within Dexafit Asia from an evidence-based perspective. To put it simply, within Dexafit Asia, I am the geek. Yeah. So some of my key responsibilities is to foster relationship with partners within Asia, to look into the sciences within Dexafit Asia itself, to make sure that the operations are running smoothly, things like that. So along with my role as head of education in Dexafit Asia, I also work as a sports nutritionist. And this is really important as a double role per se, because by working in Dexafit Asia, I get to see the data, but by working as a sports nutritionist, and looking at physiological data from Dexafit Asia, when I work with my own clients and athletes, I get to see the practical area. I get to see how data from Dexafit Asia can play such a great and important role to help athletes and everyday people like you and I to really transform our life. Right. So I'm going to share with you guys the Dexafit journey. So once again, if you are going to, if you want to work with us, drop us an email at hello@dexafitasia.com, address it to Jimmy or myself, James, and just tell us who you are, what you're looking at as a partnership. You know, we have a lot of things going on. We might be able to collaborate with you guys. Yeah, so just drop us a message. All right, so if you guys are excited for my presentation today, just drop me a let's go. Get me excited to share with you. Let me put my 100% in. So before I begin my presentation, I'm going to be sharing with you a video. I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of videos actually. Awesome, Garrett. Awesome, Ian. You guys are awesome. Awesome, Jimmy. Yeah, so let's go with this video. All right, awesome. So before I continue, can you guys help me a little bit? Tell me if you can hear the voice, the music inside the video, because it will be important for the rest of my presentation. Anyway, this video was done by my colleague, my colleagues over here at the Dexafit Asia team. So, you know, yeah, really excited to share with you about today's journey in Dexafit Asia. Awesome. Thank you, Roy. Thank you everyone for letting me know. All right, so Jimmy is going to introduce us how Dexafit Asia looks like. Jimmy is our regional general manager here at Dexafit Asia, and he is going to share with us how the location looks like. If you guys are excited, just type go Jimmy. Jimmy is going to share with you how our place looks like.
Let me show you around. This is the DEXA laboratory for our DEXA scan. And over here we have our VO2 max room. And on our right is our resting metabolic room. And our 3D scan. Once you're done with the test, you can take a seat over here while enjoying the view. Let me show you.
So that's how Dexafit Asia looks like. Who loves the view? All right, I can see that Dr. Ryan loves the view. Jimmy said hi to you guys. Yeah, he did a really great job showing us how the place looks like, right? So today I'm really going to share with you about the Dexafit journey. The Dexafit journey over here in Dexafit Asia really comprises of 4 main services, and these 4 main services are seen as physiological tests in the medical world per se. And really what it does is to look into both the inside and the outside of your body to measure how your metabolic health looks like and how your cardio fitness looks like. All right, Jimmy, you're getting a lot of love over here. Okay, so to get us started, I'm going to share with you guys about DEXA, the DEXA scan itself. The long name is really dual energy X-ray absorption metry. See, it's such a long name that really we don't want to like pronounce it every time we have to say it out, right? Like you can literally hear me not being able to pronounce the last word. So to make it really simple, all of us really just call it DEXA scan. So it's spelled DEXA or DXA scan. So at this current point, hospitals really use this as a bone mineral density scan. A bone mineral density scan essentially looks at how healthy your bones are. But really within the global standards, it's also seen as the gold standard for using the DEXA scan as the gold standard for body composition. So looking at things like your body fat, your visceral fat, things like that, and looking at your lean mass. I'll share with you a little bit more about the results in a bit. So a lot of people who are looking to the DEXA scan, they are slightly more concerned because one thing that's worrying is that it's a medical device. So radiation is involved. So the really cool thing is that radiation is not really very high with the DEXA scan, and it's actually very low in terms of invasiveness. What I mean by that is that you can actually do the DEXA scan without any contact. And I guess within the COVID season right now, it can be a little bit of a concern, right? If you have to do a technique like, for example, the skin fold where I have to pinch you, it's such a contactful technique. But with the DEXA scan, there is no contact. You really just go in, you can lie down. Our radiographer might line you up a little bit, but that's all. And then you just stay on the DEXA scan, just lie down and enjoy yourself for about 7 minutes. Some of our clients, they say that they get the most relaxing sleep inside that 7 minutes just because they had a long day. The last point that's really exciting is that DEXA scan itself has a very low radiance. What this means is that it's highly accurate. When you do 2 scans on a different body composition measurement, you might stand up on it, go down, and then step out on it again. You might see 2 different body fat percentage numbers that can range all the way up to 11%. That's really scary, right? But with the DEXA scan itself, it's very low radiance. What we mean by that is that it's about 3%, and usually standard deviation is 1.5 up or down. So let's say at 20%, you lie down on the DEXA scan, come out, you might see your 20%, lie down again, come out, you might see at most, maybe 19% or so. Yeah. Is that accurate? If that's accurate, just type accurate on the chat. So I'm going to share you the process of the DEXA scan, but I'm not going to tell you about it myself because I feel like it's going to be really long. So instead of that, I'm going to share you through video. Let's go. Let us talk about the process of the DEXA scan. Our fitness specialist will guide you through a doctor's consultation to get your referral letter. This is required in order to perform a DEXA scan in Singapore. You will then be guided to the back to put your items in your personal locker. Our radiographer will then bring you to the DEXA laboratory. Do remember to ensure that you do not have any clothes with metal as it will directly affect your results. The DEXA scan will take approximately 7 minutes to complete, so stay comfortable. When you are done, our fitness specialist will guide you through your results, ensuring that you understand your own data. And that's it! Knowing your body composition is important and you definitely want to make sure that it is accurate. Want to get your DEXA scan done? Drop us a call today and we will book the appointment for you. See you! Awesome. So that's basically it about the DEXA scan process. You talk to a doctor say, okay, we get the DEXA scan done for you, and then you come out and then we just run a consultation with you. So within Singapore, if you were to do it with another lab or so, you might take a little bit longer because usually most clinics do not have their own DEXA scan. So then there's a whole referral process that usually takes at minimum maybe about 2 hours. If you need to do a different location, you might take up to 2 weeks. But over here, we get everything done within 30 minutes, including the doctor consultation itself. Really cool, right? All right, so let's talk about the results you can get from the DEXA scan itself. So the first and most awesome thing you get to see is a 3D view of yourself. So the yellow is really your fat, the red is your lean mass. So the lean mass also includes your organs. And of course, the blue is your skeleton. Along with that, we can actually see the body fat and the lean mass of your body on its own body part. So what I mean by that is that we can actually look at left-right distribution. We can actually find out if you have a larger arm on the left or the right, and the legs, and the same for your lean mass. Moving on with that, we actually look into things like your health status. So the first thing that we tend to look at is your android-gynoid ratio. So if you were to look with me back at the 3D diagram of your body, you can actually see two rectangles. So the rectangle on top is actually your android area, which is really your hip area. And the bottom is your gynoid area, which is where your waist area is. So when we are measuring that, we're really looking at whether you are more apple shaped or more pear shaped per se. But this is a little bit more important, not just because of shape per se, but really because there is a correlation when we put these two numbers into a ratio, and this ratio is typically around number of 1. So what this means is that if, let's say, you have a ratio of maybe 0.6 to 0.8, you might be within the perfect score, the optimum score. Any number that is below 1, you are pretty much in a low risk, and any number that's above 1, you tend to be correlated towards issues like obesity. You might have some metabolic health risk to reconsider. You may have some organ-related risk that you need to take care of yourself, and of course, all-cause mortality, which essentially means your lifespan. And of course, there are other correlations that we do need to worry about. But the one thing that's awesome about the android gynoid ratio is that very often, if let's say you're just 1 plus per se, so maybe 1.0 something, and your visceral fat and your body composition is in the good zone, typically the correlation doesn't affect you as badly as compared to, let's say, we were to see like a android gynoid ratio that's high, and then you look at this graph and you realize that the body fat is high and the visceral fat is also high. So then that's when things get a bit more worrying. So can anybody explain the visceral fat to me? While you type that, I'm going to explain to everybody else. So essentially, the visceral fat essentially is in this zone right here that you can see on my screen. You can actually see that within the red color area, there are some yellow areas inside. So what happens is that in a perfect body, your body will actually have a lot of organs within the stomach area. This diagram is probably a bit too high. Your lungs are probably somewhere around where the stomach is. But essentially, when you have a lot of visceral fat, the visceral fat will start to fight with space around the area where the organs are. And those are the areas around the inside of your stomach. So what happens when you have a lot of visceral fat is that it starts to fight with space around your organs. Question, can your organs function properly if you were to have a lot of visceral fat inside your body? So essentially the answer is no. If you know the answer, type yes, type no, but the answer is no. What happens is that if you have a lot of visceral fat inside your body, then what happens is that the area around your stomach will be fighting space between the visceral fat itself and the organs itself. So then the organs will not be able to function optimally. So in the short term, maybe things are fine. You don't really know what's going on. But over time, the body starts to compensate. And let me tell you, your body is really, really good at compensating. It's so good at compensating that sometimes we don't even know that it's compensating. It's really awesome, right? But at the same time, it's really crazy because then you cannot really detect when things are really wrong. So then in the long term, when these organs continue to compensate for our obese doing, maybe we continue to enjoy really highly saturated food, we enjoy our crazy diets and whatnot, then more fat accumulates, and over time these organs start to realize that they start to overwork, and if they overwork, then maybe one or two of them start to show a little bit of a failure. So the worst case scenario is that some of them, they start to show that they don't work anymore, and then that typically starts leading towards your mortality issues, because then you have to get other organs to compensate, which then might cause other organs to compensate even more. Yeah. So that's really tiring. So visceral fat then became one of the more concerning issues, both on a health scale and a global scale. So then the next thing that is really important for a lot of our clients is the bone mineral density. So the bone mineral density essentially looks into how porous your bones are. Porous basically means if you were to look into your bones, there are actually a lot of holes. And essentially, when your bone mineral density scores are good, these holes are really very small. It's almost unseeable. And the mass of your bone itself is really very heavy. So then if, let's say, you were to accidentally fall down and things like that, typically your bone structure will be fine. Once your bone mineral density starts going down and it starts showing a red flag, what it means is that you are going to start experiencing what we call osteopenia, which means that the bones start to see a higher pores higher holes and thicker holes per se. So then your bones become holy, pun intended. Yeah, and when that happens, then if let's say you were to accidentally fall down, you might have that risk of getting a hairline fracture, and that's not really fun. Once these numbers go into the red flag, what it means is that your bone mineral density is now really low and you're entering into this stage called osteoporosis. And what that means is that your bones are starting to become really, really holey at this point, and your bones are really not very strong anymore. So if you were to experience a fracture, you might experience a little bit of a danger. You will find that your bones are very easily broken, and that's really scary because then it will not be able to handle the rest of your structure within the body. So just for information's sake, if let's say you are someone looking to improve your bone health, of course, number one, you come and do a DEXA scan with us. But in terms of improvement, you can look into things like calcium, protein, vitamin D, and vitamin K. These are very important nutrients in order to help make sure that your bone health are great. Awesome. All right, let's go on to the next test. The next test is our 3D scan. So with the DEXA scan, really, we scan the inside of your body, but with the 3D scan, we are scanning the outside of your body. So the really cool thing about the 3D scan, and I really love to call this the Iron Man test. Repeat after me and type it down, Iron Man test. Right. So what happens is that you're going to be standing on this turntable. It turns 360 degrees. I will show you a more visual idea of what's going on. And then basically what happens is that you turn one whole round, you get a reconstruction of your body. And what's really cool about the 3D scan is that it will actually create a 3D mold of yourself, which you, if you have the Dexafit AI app, you can actually use it and put it on our AR mode. Then you can kind of put yourself everywhere. So along with the 3D reconstruction, we actually have body measurement, posture analysis, and pre and post visualization, which I will show you in visuals in a bit. So let's start by talking about the process itself. On this video, you can see our female client over here standing on the platform as I was sharing. So once she does that, she actually puts her hand in a lateral position to start the test. The test is really automatic. So the reason why nobody's helping her is because this test do require you to be in tight clothes or in your undergarments, which is very private. As you can see, the moment the test starts, she starts to turn in one round. This process goes on for about 40 seconds. Usually this is obviously not shown, but this is really just for video purpose, which is why we are sharing it out. When she is done with the whole test, she puts on her clothes again. The test is done. She just puts in her personal information just for storage reasons. And then after that, she just she gets her results immediately. So to show you how her results look like, it will look something like this. This is where you can actually see the 3D mold itself. Yeah. And then if you were to press on two other buttons, you can actually see her posture analysis. And if you do more than one test with us, you can actually see the pre and post. The really cool thing is that once these are done, we will actually share them with you, as our professionals will sit down with you and run through them with you. So along with that, you can also receive a report directly from our 3D scan, which will then share with you your body measurements directly, as you can see on the image on the left. And of course, along with that, you can actually see an image on the right where we share with you your posture analysis itself. So your posture will then be shown on the front view and on the side view. And this gives us an idea of how your posture looks like. So for this individual over here, you can actually see that he is actually leaning more towards his left. So the image is actually left-right flipped. Yeah. So then this side where he is actually standing on the side that has a bigger arm, he is on his right side. Yeah, but anyway, you can actually see a posture difference, and that's where our professionals will then share with you how you can potentially improve this posture itself. Moving on, we are going to talk about our resting metabolic rate test. So if you're excited, type RMR. Meanwhile, I'm going to share with you how the process of the resting metabolic rate test looks like. Let's go. Let us talk about the process of the resting metabolic rate test. Before coming in for your test, ensure that you have fasted and are well rested for at least 8 hours. You also want to keep your training intensity low for 24 hours before the test. You will be asked to wear a heart rate monitor and a face mask, which are sanitized daily for your safety. When you are ready, our fitness specialist will connect the metabolic cart to your mask and start the test. Throughout the duration of the test, you will be requested not to move nor sleep and breathe as normally as possible, as these actions will affect the quality of your test. The test will usually take about 20 minutes. Are you ready to do the resting metabolic rate test? Book an appointment with us here at Dexafit Asia, and I will see you soon. Awesome. Yeah, so once you're done with the test, we will actually show you a result like this. So the first thing that you will actually get from the resting metabolic rate test is your metabolism. Question: is the resting metabolic rate test your total energy, or is it the amount of energy of your body at rest? So if it's the total energy, type total. If you think that it is the energy at rest only, type rest. Awesome. And moving on from here, really, we are looking at how the resting metabolic rate itself can help us. So the term resting metabolic rate, right, really means the body's minimum amount of energy the body needs at rest. So when we look at the full spectrum of what comprises as our body's total energy, we actually know that energy is being used to digest food, whether it's carbohydrate, proteins, or fat, or even your junk food and your char kway teow, your potato chips, which is really so yummy. The energy you use to move, and the energy you use to exercise. So movement exercise really with movement it's really looking at things like your household chores, when you're walking to the bus stop, things like that. And these really comprise of a good amount if let's say you're a relatively active individual. But if let's say you're a working individual or sitting on the office chair like myself, then the energy used to move usually is quite low. And then of course you have the purposeful exercises that you make, whether it's in terms of cardio, resistance training, HIIT, things like that. So usually when we are talking about the resting metabolic rate test itself, I like to say that the RMR itself is the minimum amount of energy required to allow your body to function well. Some people, especially let's say you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to try and lose some pounds on a relatively quick manner, and you maybe choose to decide to do intermittent fasting or full fast and stuff yourself as much as possible, you do realize that sometimes you become a lot more tired, maybe a bit more irritated. You might find that you have very low energy. And the reason why is because you're not meeting your minimum energy requirement or your resting metabolic rate. So what happens with that is that the body starts to realize that, okay, I'm not getting enough nutrients and I need to start to slow down on how much energy I'm using on a daily basis. So basically it's like the body saying, I'm trying to save money, but in this case, I'm trying to save calories. Cool? And along with the energy that you use to digest food, the amount that you use to move, the amount to exercise, that's your total daily energy output. Or for those of us in the science world, it's called the total daily energy expenditure. So between the amount of total daily amount of energy output versus your minimum requirement, there is a difference. And this difference is what I like to call the key window of opportunity. If you're an athlete, this window of opportunity means the amount of opportunity you have to eat more in order for you to perform better at sports. But if let's say you are someone who is just trying to lead a healthy lifestyle, or maybe lose some pounds, maybe get fit and things like that, this key window of opportunity will then become your window of opportunity to see a weight loss. So how wide the gap you can create between your resting metabolic rate versus your total daily energy expenditure will then equals to the window of opportunity you will be able to see in order for you to lose weight. The really cool thing is that over here at Dexafit Asia, we are able to calculate your total daily energy output, or rather estimate it so that you can get a good start in order for you to get to where you want to be. If you were to use the Dexafit AI app, we also have some guidance around there inside your report itself. The next key thing that we like to see in the resting metabolic rate test itself is this thing called resting quotient. Repeat resting quotient with me and type RQ. So RQ is the short form for resting quotient. Some people like to use it in conjunction with respiratory exchange ratio. But really what this means, right, is that the resting quotient tells you whether your body is trying to burn more carbohydrate or whether your body is trying to burn more fats. So the number at 0.7 means that you are really burning 100% fat, and the number at 1.0 means that you are burning 100% carbohydrates. So this resting quotient that you're seeing right here usually is the chart that you will see with the report that we give to you. Essentially, at this point, the individual's resting quotient is at 0.85. And if you look at EECHO, essentially, which means energy expenditure carbohydrate or energy expenditure fat, you do see that there is a slight equal amount between their numbers at 28 and 33 accordingly. So then with that, you kind of get a snapshot of what kind of fuel your body is using when you're resting. This, of course, is not a nutrition recommendation, but really just an idea of where your body is taking its energy from. And then from there, you kind of know like, okay, whether you are burning more fat or more carbohydrate. Those of you who are in ketosis or trying to be on the keto diet will find this interesting, because when you manipulate your diet by eating more fats, you of course see that your number will go more towards the 0.7 side or burning more fat side. Lastly, I'm going to share with you about our VO2 max test. VO2 max test is the gold standard or the medically recognized test for us to use for cardiorespiratory fitness. To put it simply, I like to say that essentially this is the number that you look at when you're trying to figure out how healthy your heart and lungs are. So let me just quickly, along with that, we also find that the VO2 max number itself gives us an idea of your longevity or your health, because when your number is too low, it usually means that your heart and lungs are not very healthy, or rather it's not very strong. So that it means that you do need to train more in order to get a healthier heart. It is also used within the national game levels as a performance indicator. So just some fun facts. A physiologist who used to work within the SEA Games arena or like with sports school and stuff like that told us that the minimum amount of VO2 max endurance runners do need to have is 50. And we know that people who are in the Olympics, they tend to have a VO2 max minimum of around 60. And the reason why these numbers are very important is because without hitting these VO2 max numbers as the bare minimum indicator or bare minimum requirement, a lot of professionals find that they are not able to compete against those who are already within those numbers. Yeah. And that became a very strong performance indicator within the sporting world. The really cool thing about doing a VO2 max test with us is that you can actually look at your optimum fuel utilization. So later on, I'll show you a chart and tell you a little bit more about what I mean. But essentially, you can look at the intensity between your fat and carbohydrate usage at different heart rate levels. Okay, I'm going to show you a video process of how we do the VO2 max test. Ready? Let's go! Today, we will go through the procedures of the VO2 max test. To begin, we will ask you to wear a heart rate monitor under your shirt in front of your chest. Your fitness specialist will then assist you to wear the mask, ensuring that it is tightly fitted yet comfortable enough to run with. You will then be requested to press the white area of your mask while breathing out, ensuring that there is no air leakage around your mask. This is to ensure that all your exhaled air will flow through the spirometer plugged into your mask later on. A harness will also be provided for you. This is optional, although highly encouraged for safety purposes. When all the steps are done and you are good to go, we will slot the spirometer into your mask, getting you ready for your run. Your fitness specialist will also ask you a few questions to ensure that they select the right protocol for your VO2 max test. He will then explain the protocol, and when you are ready, execute the test. In the next video, we will discuss how a VO2 max test result looks like. Follow us to learn more! Awesome. Yeah, so once you're done with the VO2 max test, the first number that we share with you is the VO2 itself. By the way, guys, if you have any questions, you can feel free to type them on the question box right now, as I'm going to end my presentation very, very soon. So as I was saying, if let's say your number is really, really low, within the 20s, within the late 20s per se, then typically we know that that's an indicator to say that your VO2 max itself might be on the lower end, and that might be a bit of a problem, because we are looking at things like all-cause mortality, we're looking at things like your heart health itself and your lung health itself. Yeah, but you can also see that as the number increases, it also shows that your heart is getting stronger, your lungs are getting stronger, and it also means that you have a higher chance of creating a higher all-cause mortality or higher longevity itself. So within the Dexafit AI app, you will find this number called longevity. Essentially, it is a predicted age score of how long you are likely to live per se. And the really cool thing, right, is that the VO2 max itself plays a really big role in terms of your longevity health itself. So as your VO2 max number goes higher, you do find that your longevity also increases. So this is definitely one test you do want to consider if you are looking at trying to live as long as possible. So remember I was talking to you about fuel optimization. This is a data from one of our clients. He is a really good runner. What you can see on the left side that says fat, on the right side it says carbohydrate, you can actually see the kind of fat utilization and carbohydrate utilization that he has. So this is important because number one, you can actually figure out at what heart rate your body is able to use the most amount of fat. And for those of us who is trying to lose fat, this might be a great heart rate level for you to run it on a relatively frequent basis, because what that means is that you'll be able to use more fat to metabolize for your run even more. Then because you're using more fat, right, you are likely to burn more fat and maintain the rest of your body in its good structure. For those of us who might be a little bit more competitive, if you look with me into the 12-minute mark, you can actually see this cross junction between the fat and the carbohydrate. That's what I like to call the critical power point. And essentially what happens over here is that most individuals find that they actually run or train at the most relaxed level around this heart rate level. And then later on at the 15-minute mark, you realize that the fat levels have already dropped all the way down and the carbohydrates all the way up. This is because the intensity for the test has gone really, really high. And the individual is really requiring to use a lot more aerobic power, a lot more power in order to run. This happens the same for all of us in the sense where the higher or the more intensive the exercise is, the more likely you are to rely on carbohydrate. So then this gives us a good idea of what type of heart rate your body will be at when you are really depending on your carbohydrate stores 100%. I know that that's quite a bit of a mouthful to listen and quite a bit of dry information. So the really cool thing is that all these are already inside the report of your Dexafit AI app. As long as you're doing a VO2 max test with us, you'll be able to see all this report and you'll be able to know what kind of calories you are burning at different types of heart rate and different types of intensity. You'll even get to know your VT1 and VT2 if you are into things like your lactate test and your lactate threshold. Cool, right? I know. Okay, so the big question or elephant in the room is, how does the Dexafit journey itself relate towards you? Like at the end of the day, you're listening about this either for you, your clients, your business people. So how does this really play a role in your life? First, of course, you do a DEXA scan with us. You do the whole Dexafit suite with us, right? With the DEXA scan and 3D scan, you'll be able to see the inside and the outside of your body. You'll also be able to look at the posture analysis of your body. And these are all very important stages, right? Because this will give you an idea of your baseline. Then when you're doing the VO2, the 3D scan itself, you get to understand your metabolism in terms of the resting metabolic rate. This then translates over to your total daily energy output. With the VO2 max test, you then get to understand your VO2 test, your VO2 number, and know how healthy you are at this point of time. And along with that, with the heart rate zones being placed out for you along the calorie numbers, you can then calculate how much calories you actually need to burn in order to reach a certain threshold or certain body composition that you're looking for. And then with all this information, you can then create a whole program for yourself. Or you can ask our fitness specialist to help you with that, and we'll be able to direct you to create a program for yourself. These are a lot of information, to be fair, and to be honest, once you are out of the Dexafit Center, some of you might actually forget this information. But what we have done over here at Dexafit and Dexafit Asia is that we have kept all this information inside the Dexafit AI app. Simply register it with the email you gave us once you are done with your test, and you'll be able to see all these results inside. And then what happens is that you'll be able to record and track these numbers with you throughout the times when you come in. So then Dexafit not only becomes your baseline and make sure that you are healthy, but it also becomes a journey that you follow along, that comes along with your journey. Because what happens is that every few months later, once you have checked yourself, you want to do a pre and post monitoring, and you might want to do this on a relatively long lifetime. So then Dexafit will be able to fit into your lifestyle by making sure that your numbers are good in terms of your body composition, your numbers are good in terms of your VO2 max, and whenever you need to make a change, your resting metabolic rate test is there to make sure that you are well energized. Yeah, so that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. Do you guys have any questions? By the way, once again, if you want to work with us, drop us an email at hello@dexafitasia.com. And then address it to me or Jimmy. We will be able to reply you on whatever partnerships you might have in store for us. Once again, we do have a lot of partnerships going on, things like the trainer support scheme. We do have exclusive discounts for corporates and stuff like that. So just drop us an email and we'll be able to look into partnerships with you. Ravinder asks, I live in KL, Malaysia. Where's the nearest location to do a test and how much will it cost? Ravinder, at this point, the Dexafit Center, the closest one is at Singapore, which is our branch in Novena. I do believe that we are opening one in Malaysia very, very soon. So if you're interested, drop me an email over at hello@dexafitasia. Once Malaysia is open, we can drop you an email about it and let you know. Does anybody else have any other questions? All right, while waiting for the questions, I'm going to talk about Brendan's presentation. His presentation's title is Because Earlier is Better. Brendan is the CFO of Dexafit US. His main responsibility is identifying strategic partnership opportunities for the company. He brings over 8 years of experience, which includes a stint in equity research, equity trading, and investment banking. His goal at Dexafit is to do for health and wellness what he saw happen in finance when technology disrupted traditional financial methods. Wearables present a unique opportunity to collect activity data about what people are doing to improve their health, but they currently lack reliable insights into what effect specific activities have on health. Bridging the gap between someone's health history and wearable data with medical grade data from Dexafit's technology will create a unique opportunity to offer scientifically validated health solutions at scale. Okay, so right now I'm going to invite Brendan to talk to us. Brendan, are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. All right, let me just share your presentation. Is this correct?
Perfect. There we go.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you, James. Happy to be here and participate. Now, if you want to go to this first slide here. All right. So I'll be talking about just a couple of topics here today. Adam talked about how Dexafit was started and its progression over the past decade or so almost now. And then James has really given you an idea of what the journey looks like from the perspective of a Dexafit customer, having this testing done yourself, how it looks like in the app, and the data that you can expect. And then I'll be talking a bit about now how Dexafit is looking towards the future. So we'll be talking about the future of Dexafit, kind of the testing facilities and the physical representation of Dexafit, as well as the future of Dexafit AI, the software components and tool sets that we're building both in the Dexafit app, among other tools, to help the individual, pros, and industry, whether it's employers or insurance or whoever, to make as much use of this information as we can. And then last, the community benefit. Where do the Dexafit layers, where does Dexafit layer into existing infrastructure and our plan to support communities with better tools? So over the years, we've tried our best to listen to individual client experiences, identify partnerships that have had outsized success compared to those that didn't do as well, to really craft everything that we've built to support the areas of success that really are easy to replicate, and to help more and more people achieve the success that they're looking for. So go to the next slide here. We'll start with the future of Dexafit. So when it comes to the future of Dexafit in its physical state, there's a couple things that we'll focus on. Expanding access is number one. A key concern with any innovation in healthcare is equitable access to services. And the Dexafit software approach is really our way of making it much easier to access this sort of information without having to have experts in your region or having to rely on whether it's a physician or a doctor that specializes in this sort of testing in your specific region. Just being able to have this data with the testing locally, and then being able to access existing programs or wellness pros in a digital marketplace that are showing that hey, I'm doing this with all these different clients. This is the success we're seeing, and not having to require them to be, within a couple miles of you to be able to work with them, expanding that relationship to something more digital to allow now a global audience. Infrastructure is a way to help maintain lower cost and much wider spread access. The second portion will be the Pro Marketplace, and the Pro Marketplace is going to be a feature that's launching in the Dexafit app that is meant to connect, again, these individuals that are coming in and having this testing done with wellness pros that are looking to help those individuals achieve some aspect of their preventative health goals or just their performance and fitness goals. Now, the goals that someone is shooting for will be dependent on what their journey is looking like, and that's going to be dependent on what their baseline testing looks like. And so the idea here is that someone will have their baseline testing, and then we'll constrain the wellness pros that are an ideal fit for them based on the opportunities that they have based on their data. But we'll go into more why this is important to be able to match people up to a wellness pro that's a good fit for them based on where they are when we get to those slides. And then the last piece of the future of Dexafit will be app features that are really kind of specifically focused around the testing that's currently being done, and then the tools that allow you to make better use of that testing through time to ensure that more and more people are able to replicate the success that we've seen with many of our Dexafit clients over the years. And then again, really adding superpowers to the wellness pros that have also helped those clients meet their goals over time. So James, if you want to go to the next slide here. Okay, so expanding access. The first part I want to start with is this existing infrastructure piece. Now, one of the exciting things about DEXA technology, as well as cardiopulmonary testing, the CPET testing, is that these are tools and devices that have been around for decades now. This is a mature medical equipment technology. It exists in many hospitals and many kind of individual private clinics throughout the globe, though it's often not really presented that way on perhaps their websites, where it's not their kind of primary draw. But it's a mature industry that has a wide service network and a large install base. But that install base is not readily available to consumers to know that, all right, this is available and I can access it and it's low cost. And the data on those systems is often not in a format that is conducive for individuals to understand very easily. And so this presents a really unique opportunity where a lot of the equipment to do this testing is already out there, but it's not set up in a way to make it easy for people to get access to it and then have their results in a way that makes sense to them over time. So now we can take our software that we've developed and pair it up with the existing system so that we can both send customers to them so that people know that this is available at these sites that maybe were already in their neighborhood without them knowing. And then being able to pull that data back into the Dexafit app so that they can, again, make better sense of it by allowing us to use our artificial intelligence and machine learning to abstract away a lot of the complexity and help present essentially a roadmap of here's where you should be going moving forward from here. So this is something that allows us to scale much more quickly, because instead of having to go out and sell hardware equipment and say this is something that's going to be a big benefit to you, buy this equipment and then pair the software up with it, there's already a lot of facilities that already have the equipment, and often it's just very underutilized outside of their typical workflow. And so they have a lot of availability to allow more people to come in at an effective cost and get more out of it, because a lot of the facilities do the testing, but they don't do anything with the results, or it would be very expensive to work with a physician with the results. And so it never occurred to them that they could do this other pathway where they do the testing that would feed into this Dexafit app. And then the app is responsible for helping the individual understand the results and then put those results to work with, whether it's a wellness pro or just within a framework that allows them to succeed. So layering on top of existing infrastructure is a way for us to scale much more rapidly. Alongside that, the software install, kind of like I alluded to, something that's very quick. Again, these systems are very uniform and very similar. The biggest kind of obstacle is whether it's in a hospital environment or other environment where there's some specific IT restrictions that we need to accommodate, which we've done in the past. But generally, the software install is something like less than 30 minutes. This is very quick. It's easy to get up and running, and it's easy to train the technologist for how to export the data to ensure that it's getting to the app. And we continue to refine that process as well. So very easy to get up and running. And again, this is equipment that's already installed, and all of a sudden within 30-minute appointment, you're now a new node on our Dexafit app that can send app data or equipment data to our platform. And then finally, low cost. So again, since we're layering on top of existing infrastructure, the software isn't something where we need to send someone out and have all sorts of travel costs and install labor and things like that. It keeps the cost down quite a bit from in terms of the marginal cost of getting the software on these systems from our side. And then again, these are systems that are already installed, they're often underutilized. And so any incremental business that gets added on top of these systems is really just a bonus in a lot of ways. And so it's a very compelling offer to facilities that already have this equipment installed because they can increase the revenue with essentially no work on their side. And so all of these things combine into allowing us to rapidly expand access across the globe and keep costs down. Again, if this is something that was only available to just very wealthy people, you're not really making that big of a difference. And so this is something that allows us to keep costs very low and very accessible for a wide range of people. Okay, next slide here. Okay, so the Pro Marketplace is something we're really excited about. Now, there's kind of a journey to this as well that expands upon the journey that Adam and James have talked a little bit about. The idea here is that a customer would start with their baseline testing, and then that's going to identify their current health status, right? Are they looking to be losing fat? Are they looking to put on lean mass? How much visceral fat do they have? Where's their bone density? All of these components that are really important for understanding what their goals should really be focusing on. Because many people don't really know what their goals should be. That's unclear if they should be focusing on losing fat or putting on lean mass. And a lot of times someone says, I just want to be this % body fat because that sounds like it's impressive. But it's not because they care about being at that body fat percentage. It's just because they didn't have a specific goal that they felt strongly about. And so the idea here is, again, to constrain the expectations of what someone's goal should be to something that's both realistic and achievable based on what their starting point is. And part of that process is then showing, all right, here are reasonable goals, and then here's how you accomplish those goals. And accomplishing goals can really be looked at as either a self-starter component or individuals that need some spectrum of assistance with that. And so individuals, in the past in particular, people that were very analytical and kind of self-starters were big Dexafit clients early on because they were the people that were most ready to take in the data after a scan and just do their own thing with it. But that's not most people. Most people will want some sort of framework to work within to ensure that they're able to achieve success, because it's difficult to be an expert in all of these things. And there's so much bad information out on the internet and social media that ends up really confusing people and makes it feel like they're unable to succeed because they don't know where to start. And being able to constrain people to programs or wellness pros that are really, by an evidence-based proxy of when individuals similar to you work with these wellness pros or these programs, this is the sort of spectrum of success that we typically see over time. And then these are programs that typically don't work for people like you. And at first we might not know why, but over time we'll hopefully have more and more data that can start to help us figure out why is it exactly that this program or this person works much better than this other sort of program. But the key is, it's not really important to an individual why a program doesn't work. What's important is this program is most likely to work for you, and you don't need to think about it because we only have so much cognitive capacity that we can utilize. And when people feel overwhelmed with the decision-making and information available to them, it's very difficult to proceed without any sort of fallback. People get stuck because it's paralysis by analysis. So constrain the programs that are available to them to the ones that are most likely to help them succeed. And then the final component of this is now assess progress. And Adam talked about this a little bit, where you want to make sure that you're not coming in a year or 2 years later, not having any follow-ups, because you may not be seeing the progress that you were hoping for. If you come back a year later or 2 years later, we've seen people that they're either exactly the same or they're worse off. And at that point, people tend to have an emotional response to that, because it feels like a personal failing that, I thought everything that I was doing over the past year or two was working, and it finds out that it was not working. It's hard to not take that personally if you feel like you were doing all the right things. But the key is to use this as just an objective way to overcome our human biases that we experience with our own consciousness, and say, okay, this is going to tell me whether or not I'm on the right track. Doesn't say anything about me personally. And this is going to help me get to the goal that I want to get on, or the program that's the best fit for me, and eliminate those that are not a good fit for me. For whatever reason, they're not a good fit. And so that's why staying closer to 3 to 6 months is really a better timeline for that follow-up process, because 3 to 6 months, particularly 3 months, is really a long enough time frame to see meaningful change, but not so long where it's now decoupled from any number of things you might have tried. We want to keep it very tightly coupled with, I did my baseline, this is the program that I followed, and then this was the outcome of that program. And when you have that tightly linked, you now have a much better idea of what is it exactly for these programs that is helping people get the success that we want when it comes to their goals. And once people get that first good follow-up scan, now they're starting to get hooked. They get that confidence that, hey, I can actually do this. This isn't as hard as I thought it was. But if people get too focused day to day of, oh, am I making progress? Am I making progress? How's my scale weight changing? Then they can get discouraged if, one day their weight's up, the next day their weight's down. They're just kind of doing this yo-yo, which is expected, because, progress is generally not linear, kind of comes in spurts and stops and starts. But the key is to trust the process over a long enough time frame to, get an idea of if this is actually working or not. And there's just too much day-to-day variability for just weighing yourself every day to having that be any sort of useful information on whether or not you should continue the program or not. So the key is, again, constrain the program to those that are most likely to be successful for you, trust the process over that period, and then do the follow-up testing to evaluate whether or not that process was effective. So we're really excited about this upcoming feature here, and expanding the pros and programs that'll be available in that marketplace. Next slide, James. And when it comes to future app features, we're always on the lookout for what's helping, what's not helping, and what seems to be missing for individuals when they're doing testing. And so Adam alluded to this a little bit earlier, but blood testing biomarkers will be available in the app soon here. So whether that's being able to purchase the lab testing or being able to import lab testing you already have had done, and then being able to see how that's progressing over time, and whether or not that's within an optimal range or more high risk range, whether that's high or low. And part of that as well will be, how should I be tracking that blood testing over time? What would valuable biomarkers be for me specifically within, say, the next 6 months or the next years? What are things that I should be keeping an eye on? And then realistic goal planning. This is something that we've thought a lot about as well. The current implementation of this in the Dexafit app looks like as it does on this screenshot, where it shows you where you are now, but then you can adjust these sliders to left or right based on the metric of either increasing or decreasing body fat percentage, lean mass, visceral fat, so on and so forth, to get an idea of, all right, if I saw this change, what is the impact for this metric or this metric? And we do set some basic default goals based on where you currently are to make sure it's not too ambitious of a goal. But we're looking to refine that in the future, where we've gotten to the point where we have enough data where we can say, based on people that are similar to you that have had a baseline, this is what progress looks like over a duration of 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. And again, constraining people to what the actual possible scope of outcomes typically looks like. So letting people know that this is what average progress looks like over that time frame, this is what outstanding progress looks like, and this is where people tend to regress, or this is how bad it can get within 3 months, to give people, again, a better idea of this is what the scope of possibility looks like, and this is what we should be shooting for, and being happy with that. And having improper expectations based on oftentimes misinformation can set people up to be really frustrated with their progress, because they might be thinking that, oh, well, I saw this program on social media that said I could lose 20 pounds of fat this month, and then they don't do that, then they're upset. But that was never a realistic option for them in most cases. So being able to set realistic goals that is repeatably achievable is what keeps people on track and within their scope of potential ability, rather than just some generic goal that isn't made with them in mind. In addition to that, various Wellness Pro tools to help with the Wellness Pros and programs that are looking to assist individuals make progress. So being able to manage your relationship with individual clients at a larger scale to keep an eye on activity from wearable data, whether it's biomarkers or just the testing in general, being able to incorporate all of that into a dashboard with alerts and things like that for the Wellness Pro, so that they can make sure that they're doing as good a job as possible keeping up with what's changing in their clients' physical state and their health state, and understanding when it's important for them to have more of a personal touch, and then when someone's really kind of established a routine with their program and can follow that effectively over time. As well, recommended testing, that's kind of a little bit with what I was saying with the biomarkers, but one of the things that I've found over the years is that many people do not have, at least in the United States, do not have a effective relationship with a primary care physician or just a healthcare professional in general in their 20s or often their 30s as well. And that's really a crucial time to be establishing your kind of peak maturity health status data points. But preventative healthcare is not really based around actually doing preventative care. It's at best, it's helping us kind of manage the onset of disease progression, so managing diabetes risk, cardiovascular disease risk, but it's really not set up to help people with understanding what optimal health looks like. And so being able to provide a framework for individuals to understand not only how do I help minimize my preventative health risks, how do I actually optimize my health to have the best longevity and health span that I can. And so being able to take someone's demographic data, their height, weight, sex, and then their current Dexafit testing data to say, here's where you are, here's where your risks are, and then here's how we get you towards more of your optimal, essentially, representation of your entire body, whether that's Dexafit testing, blood markers, or any range of the testing that we do to fully capture that macro health state to what your kind of peak potential is. And alongside that, what sort of testing should people be doing, whether that's Dexafit testing or biomarker blood tests as well. So you have these sorts of things at your peak maturity and can track how that's changing as we age, which is really important, especially with something like bone density, where if you're not being tested for bone density until 60 years old, and you find out you have low bone density, it's not clear if that's something that has occurred within the past 6 months or a year, or was that happening 30 years ago? And so having this roadmap of your body, all of these really important health metrics of your body from the time of a very young age really helps us have a better understanding of how is our body changing through time, how is our risk profile changing through time, and are we doing as much as we can to optimize our health to help us give the best quality of life that we can achieve. And then kind of alongside that, the disease risk as well, where not everyone's going to be necessarily even focused on getting as much optimal body composition or health stats as they can, but at the very least minimizing their disease risk. And part of minimizing disease risk is understanding what is my disease risk. And when it comes to most of the preventative health diseases, things like cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, these are things that are very adequately described by DEXA testing and cardiopulmonary testing. And this gives us a very great opportunity to establish, this is your risk of heart disease, this is your risk of type 2 diabetes. If you stay on this path, this is what we are expecting your trajectory to look like over the next 5 or 10 years. And this is what you can do to manage that. And one of the issues with something like, say, A1C testing for type 2 diabetes is that it's become a metric that people tend to not really understand that much, where, if I'm below this arbitrary cutoff, then I don't have diabetes and therefore I'm fine. And unfortunately, that's true until it's not true, because type 2 diabetes is a progressive disease state where it just gets bad enough that now your A1C is above this, somewhat arbitrary threshold of metabolic dysfunction. And when you've gotten to that threshold, you've no longer prevented anything. And it's not exactly clear that you can even get back to 100% optimization of that metabolic process. You are now trying to undo the damage that you've already caused. So these are things that are important to understand, that, again, based on your macro manifestation of your body composition and your health state, these are what the risks are looking like. And if you stay on this path, we can show, based on people that are very similar to you, this is what that turns into for disease, which should help give people a better understanding of, if I continue to follow this path day to day, this is what will most likely happen, which makes it hopefully more real to people and more kind of certain in front of their face that, okay, I need to be addressing this. But not only do I need to be addressing this, it seems like I have a good pathway or framework to address that. But if you just tell someone that this is your risk, good luck, then they tend to be much more likely to just discard it and not think about it, because they feel overwhelmed with, how do I actually make the changes that I need to make to reduce my risk? And then next slide. Now, with the future of Dexafit AI, I touched on a little bit of some of this stuff, but this is where we start to get into some really exciting things to help establish that framework of how people succeed. So disease detection will be an important component of that. And we'll be moving into clinical validation studies, first with coronary artery disease, but also followed by other commonly preventable diseases, like I mentioned, such as type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, potentially cancer, and more as well. But being able to take the macro view of your entire body, this is how your body composition is playing out. All of these things are very, very much a large scale representation of your health status, rather than only individual components. And so being able to tie everything together at small scales all the way up to the largest scale of your entire body gives us a much better understanding of how these pieces are playing together and producing disease risk over time. So being able to validate our existing risk assessment tools with current gold standards, such as, in the case of coronary artery disease, a CT scan of the arteries to look at blockages and things like that, gives us an opportunity to address those risks, but after we've shown this is the accuracy and its agreement with current gold standard. Next, I'll talk about patient empowerment. So as I have discussed a little bit, patients are often overwhelmed with the amount of information required to understand their health status. It's not clear to people that when I go to an appointment and talk to the physician, have all this testing done, what does any of this data mean? There's so many of the tests are done kind of as on an ad hoc basis. They're kind of siloed as individual tests. They're not meant to talk to each other. They're meant to be interpreted generally by a physician or other healthcare professional. And unfortunately, what that produces is confusion, frustration, and poor compliance with the prescribed interventions, because people don't fundamentally understand what it is that they're struggling with, and then how to either reverse or prevent the progression of these diseases. And so patients really deserve a framework that allows them to succeed without having to be an expert. People should be able to have all this data presented to them in a way that allows them to say, yep, I get it. I know what I need to do. I know what's causing me to be in the state that I'm in right now. And I feel like I can think about these things in a way that I understand. And when people have that empowerment and agency, they're much more likely to succeed than if they just don't understand where anything is. And as a result, can just ignore it essentially, or are more likely to ignore it. And then the last piece for this section will be population health. So when large scale adoption of something like this occurs, that allows for a vast potential understanding of population health trends. So AI will allow for real-time monitoring of population health, and then starting to understand what are the behaviors and programs that actually produce positive change in health status for the largest number of people over time. And so being able to allocate resources in a structure that allows you to address the most common behaviors and programs that are going to help you reduce risk for your population, and then being able to set aside other resources for some of the less common cases as well. But for population health, you really can't do these things on any sort of effective scale based on the data that's commonly used today, because the data such as BMI, basic height and weight, basic blood labs, things like that, fundamentally does not give you enough understanding of data of that person's health status to really make the most effective decision that you otherwise could. And the amount of time and money it costs to get that existing data that industry is often going off of can be replaced very easily with equivalent Dexafit testing, both similar in cost and oftentimes the same or less amount of time required. So there's some really exciting things that can be done with population health. Now, next slide here, James. Now, with disease detection, like I said, we'll be shifting into clinical studies here very soon. And we'll be starting with coronary artery disease. And one of the reasons that we're really excited about that is because there isn't a test such as like A1C with type 2 diabetes that really tells someone this is your risk or this is your status with coronary artery disease specifically, or cardiovascular disease more broadly. The current gold standard for assessing somebody's blockage or risk of coronary artery disease is doing a CT scan of the heart and arteries and looking for specific blockages, how much is that blockage in relation to the total artery diameter, things like that, which would then give the physicians an ability to know, is this someone that would be ideally suited for a stent or a bypass, and how has that blockage progressed over time. But unfortunately with CT, it's very high radiation, all in one dose, very uncomfortable procedure, and it's very expensive and it's very intimidating. And so a lot of times people put it off until they're now experiencing chest pains, and their physician is recommending a CT scan to get an understanding of what their blockage is or what the progression of disease is. But when you go in there, it's very hospital oriented. You're in a gown, you're in this big donut machine. They're putting oftentimes contrast dye into your blood. And so it's a very intimidating and uncomfortable experience, which is very scary to people. And when you get to the point, because we want to reduce radiation exposure for patients, and CT is such a high radiation exposure, it's not something that can be done much earlier and frequently over time, because the radiation exposure is just far too high for that to be feasible. So you just cannot use that for screening people over time. And as a result, it's basically only people that are really at high risk or a high likelihood of having coronary artery disease that are having this sort of procedure done to screen them for artery blockages. And again, this is an example of, at this point, you're not really preventing anything. You haven't given people a framework to stop this from happening. You're only now getting them in the pipeline to do other procedures that the hospital is able to do to help manage the progression of the disease. And so being able to use DEXA and our other testing to start essentially screening people and helping them understand their risk progression from a much younger age allows you to basically totally circumvent that existing status quo and actually give people a chance of addressing their behaviors or habits that would lead to that coronary artery disease. Now, type 2 diabetes is an example of, there is A1C, there is an existing sort of test that's very cost effective and easy to do that gives you the diagnosis of, does this person have type 2 diabetes or not? But the issue with that is that, again, this is very similar to coronary artery disease, where by the time you're doing A1C and it's saying that you're above this threshold, you have not prevented anything. You are now trying to reverse the damage of this disease state, which now puts you at a disadvantage, because both the habits that you've built up to that point have become much more solidified in your brain. And then you are now no longer trying to get back to 100% health. You're trying to get to some place that's at least not as much of disease progression, which is a much more difficult place to work from. And so if you can tell people that, okay, say you're 30 years old, you've got obesity, you've got a lot of visceral fat, but your A1C is below the cutoff for type 2 diabetes. Being able to tell them that your likelihood of developing type 2 diabetes over, say, the next 5 or 10 years is, say, 80%, if nothing changes and you continue on this path, that hopefully makes it much more real to people that, okay, I'm really putting myself at high risk for developing this disease. And I understand that, and that's very clear to me. But now I know that there's a pathway to get off of this, and being able to show people that, hey, within just say 3, 6, 12 months, you can meaningfully decrease your risk without that much difficulty. As long as you start now, people often respond to that much better, because they feel like they have hope that, hey, I can actually do something about this. I can get back on the right track. But if they're 50 years old or 45 years old and they're now diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they're at a much more difficult starting place because they feel much more hopeless at this point because they already have the disease. Oftentimes they're in a worse body composition state, and it's a much more difficult starting point where people don't feel like they have the ability or the agency to get back on track. So being able, again, with coronary artery disease and type 2 diabetes, being able to help people get back on track much earlier in their lifetimes is drastically able to increase their chances of success and reduction of lifetime disease risk for these preventable diseases. And then the clinical studies component is really important because, you know, as it stands right now, we've got plenty of really good internal data that supports our risk assessment with these things. And it's very obvious that things like body composition and cardiorespiratory fitness obviously are some of the driving factors behind preventative disease. Being able to have a very clear paper that shows not only are these very highly correlated with disease risk with Dexafit testing, but this is the level of agreeableness with current gold standards such as CT or A1C. And not only does it have a high level of agreeableness with those tests, we're able to do this much more frequently and much earlier in time so that we can actually help people change their progress and have a higher chance of success. So that's really important for helping people actually manage their disease or their risk through time. And then next slide. Now, patient empowerment, I touched on a little bit, but this is something that I feel really strongly about based on the thousands of people that I've interacted with over the past 6 years or so. One of the things that I really see is that if someone comes in and they already know what they're doing, they tend to always succeed. They tend to often already be in a really good spot, or if they're in a not as good spot, they're already aware of that and they know what the plan is to get back in place. Maybe there was, you know, some event that happened in their life that kind of got them off track, but they know where they need to be and they can get back there relatively quickly. For people that never really learned how to do that and struggle with this sort of information, because this just, you know, it's not in everyone's wheelhouse, and that's okay. They tend to be much more unsure of what their current health status is, how to proceed going forward. And a lot of these are very kind of emotional and personal obstacles that prevent them from succeeding. And this is common not just to preventative health, but for anything as it comes to how someone acts in the world. When people don't feel like they have a good understanding and a good model of how to proceed and act as an agent in the world, they tend to not be as successful and they tend to not try as often because they're scared of failing. So a big focus is starting with easy to understand. You know, if you set things up so that you have to be an expert to understand this, which to a large extent is the status quo within the current health framework, at least for the United States, where you go to a physician, they're the expert, they'll tell you what to do, but you don't get to really understand what it is that's going on with you. They'll tell you, take this medication or take this, you know, do this intervention, but they don't help you understand really what's going on. And part of that is they only have so much time with you. And the other part of it is that it's difficult in a lot of ways to crunch all of this expertise down into something that's easy to digest and understand. And not everyone's a good teacher and is not good at explaining these sorts of things. But with most of the testing that we're doing, we've already shown that we can crunch most of this down into a format that's much easier to understand, much more simplified, uses language that's common to people that they can wrap their minds around, and allows people to understand it in a way that's much more intuitive. And that's something that when your focus is on specifically helping people to understand this information, you're now incentivized to set it up in a way that allows you to achieve that. But for hospitals or physicians where there's nothing that really changes their incentive structure for helping people to understand this, then they just won't really optimize for that specific component of the patient journey. But that's something that's a big opportunity to us. And when you present this information, in my experience, to individuals in a way that now gets it to click for them and they feel like they understand it, they now get this level of agency that, again, I feel like I know how to do this and I understand where I am and what I need to do. And people that have that shift in their thinking are much more likely to succeed. So that's a really important component of the preventative health experience for patients. Similar to that is a familiar user experience. You know, again, within the current health framework, most of the time you're getting printed reports that are very convoluted, confusing. They use jargon in it. They have oftentimes weird units or measurements that aren't intuitive to you on a day-to-day basis. Most of the reports are meant to be shared between healthcare professionals, not with patients specifically. The patient being given their results is just kind of a unfortunate byproduct of their testing to them in most cases. And kind of in best cases, you might get access to your blood records and some of your other documents through a web dashboard. But again, it's basically still fundamentally the paper that was being used that's uploaded to a dashboard that you can see. It's not making it any easier for you to understand what's actually going on, being able to access in a way that's reliable and easy. A lot of times these websites that are built are really terrible from a customer experience standpoint. So being able to package everything into something that exists on the patient's phone, that is in a format that they understand, that is similar to other apps that they use, keeps the information content within a format that is familiar to their other day-to-day experiences. And that's often how the brain learns. It's anchored to, we best learn when we anchor concepts that are new to us to concepts that we already know. And when you present the Dexafit concepts from this sort of testing and other health tests as well, in a way that people already interact with, they're much more likely to pick these things up very quickly. And the result of all this is that hopefully you remove roadblocks to success, right? Any link along the way that produces a friction point, whether that's they don't understand the information, it's not in a way that's accessible and easy for them to understand, and it requires too much expertise to understand. All of these are specific friction points that have more and more people drop off over time. And when you look at, again, at least in the United States, the current trends, the trends are that people get more and more preventative health diseases, not less, right? It's not clear that we've had any sort of positive impacts on preventative health disease risks with the interventions that the U.S. government and employers have done over time. And so clearly what we're doing right now is just not working. And so a big part of that is helping people reduce these roadblocks so that there's less friction to their success. And the question to the audience is, when you think about your own personal experience with your health, and when you try to introspect and be honest with what's preventing me from seeing the progress that I'm looking for, what are the things that you point to and say, I wish I knew this, or, if only I had this, that would help me better understand what I need to do. Those sorts of stories are things that both I'd love to address and help us craft the product that we're building to address those concerns. And next slide, James. And then population health. When you go from just an individual that does this sort of testing to a large population of individuals doing this, now you unlock a really amazing amount of data that can help decision making on a much larger scale. So being able to monitor trends of whether it's from the perspective of a government, from all of your citizens, and how that, if it's a nationalized health service, how that impacts your health spending and health status of all of your citizens, to insurance or employers, where you want to better understand what's our expected cost going to be. Is the trend that people are getting more sick or less sick, and as a result, will that increase or decrease our spending? And then what sort of interventions or programs are actually having a meaningful impact on our population, so that we can allocate resources in a way that actually is having an impact, rather than just feeling good that we're spending money on it, even if it's not helping people. And part of that is reinforcing healthy behaviors, right? When people are doing the things that are actually reducing their health risks and helping them understand their current health status and what to be doing day to day, we should be rewarding those sorts of things by whether it's lower insurance premiums or whatever sort of format that makes sense. Being able to reward people for the behaviors that are actually helping reduce their risk and reduce their healthcare costs helps incentivize people to actually be doing that, right? If the only benefit is that I don't get sick until I'm 60 years old, but I'm 20 right now, my brain doesn't work in a way that I'm going to optimize for that. I'm going to optimize for something else that's much nearer term. And so being able to incentivize people to actually care long term to manage this, if they don't intrinsically care at a young age, it's helps you get that data from a younger age, and again, get them on the right track at a younger age as well, which then helps you downstream as they get to 50, 60 years old as well, when healthcare costs start to go up. And then again, for these stakeholders, right, it's important for governments, employers, insurance, for all of these invested stakeholders that have a population of individuals that they're focused on, whether it's reducing their costs, increasing productivity, or, again, from the perspective of a government, the government should be a representation of its citizens and should have their best interests as a primary focus of its instantiation. And so, all of these various entities that are kind of distinctly interested in their own reasons, but also have a common interest as well, where they can optimize and pool resources to benefit alongside each other is absolutely an opportunity. And then next slide. Okay, and then the last kind of wrap up here is now community benefit. Why, what's the benefits of even doing this sort of thing? Why is this important? And this addresses really the three common themes that I've gone through throughout this: individuals, wellness professionals, and industry or government. From the perspective of an individual, being able to empower them to understand their preventative health, feel they have agency to address their primary risk factors and their understanding of their health status in general, and then helping reduce the number of daily prescriptions being taken, any sort of health outcomes that would otherwise be popping up as a result of preventative health disease risks, to help them feel like they have a better control over their preventative health, reduce the friction points for making improvements, and being able to benefit by living a longer, healthier lifespan. Next, wellness professionals, individuals, whether it's physicians, personal trainers, nutritionists, whatever, being able to optimally interact with patients in a framework that allows both the patient to succeed, but the wellness pro to succeed as well, as an agent of assistance and expertise for an individual. And being able to provide tools to the wellness pros to help them better deliver the content of their expertise to individuals in a format that will allow them to succeed is something that we feel really strongly about as a key component to the patient journey over time. And we've got a lot of different wellness professionals that are all doing, really amazing and often disparate things, but they're often rowing in different directions. People are kind of optimizing on different things. So being able to pull them all together and get them rowing in the same direction for an individual patient or a population of individuals, so that you're getting a very big bump in your synergy of what everyone's doing in that chain, allows you to have a much larger impact through time. And a big part of that is, again, providing the framework, software, and tools for those wellness pros to do that, because they don't really have the tools to do that effectively right now. And then lastly, industry and government. Again, population health at this large scale is something that provides very good insight into how our patient health risks changing through time. What are the interventions that are making a difference? Why do they make a difference? What's the current incentive structures that either allow for or inhibit progress for individuals through time? And how can we address those things, whether it's through positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement by whether it's a tax or a increased premium or whatever, or lack of a benefit, to get people all on the same aligned incentive structure, where healthier patients or individuals have higher productivity, less sick time, and are healthier, happier citizens as well. But really at the end of the day, this is really the individuals that make up our society, and our companies are what allow human civilization to thrive. And it's really the right thing to do to help as many individuals as possible reach their health goals, understand what they are, and live a healthy, happy, long life to the best of their ability. So that, I believe, covers all of my slides, and I'm happy to take any questions, but I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon, for sharing. I particularly really like the part about when you were talking about patient empowerment, because I think that is really something that we really need to do, especially with, medical being such a confusing thing and such a complicated thing at this point of time. So the work that we do at Dexafit Asia is really, Dexafit as a whole is really so important, because then we can actually help our patients and our clients learn things that probably only doctors and physiologists and individuals like yourself and myself understand at the look of a data piece become such readable pieces to individuals who are everyday people, like everyone inside the audience right now. So we have a few questions for you actually. Join us. It looks like DEXA scan test and DEXAFit test in general is done regularly to compare previous data to see if any changes done is tracked. How often is often? And then in terms of the cost, I told him in advance that the pay structure or the cost structure or investment structure per se is different between the US and the Asia side. So then I gave him our website. So I think maybe you can answer his first two questions per se.
Yeah, so in terms of how often it makes sense, it depends on the individual, right? So when we have someone that has high disease risk based on their baseline data, they need to make improvements in body composition, they need to make improvements in cardiorespiratory fitness. Those are the individuals that need more touch points more frequently. So, someone that has a lot of work to do, generally, I always recommend, at least for DEXA scan follow-ups, staying within about 8 to 12 weeks, because that's a long enough time frame to see really meaningful change, but not so long where now, 12 months later, who knows what you were doing, 6 months ago or 9 months ago. And again, when people get that first positive follow-up scan, especially when it's been 8 to 12 weeks and they have a lot of progress to do, then now right off the bat, they say, okay, I feel like I'm on the right track. This is going as I expected. I'm really excited. You get that initial positive reinforcement that, okay, I can do this. And then you help maintain that momentum by now saying, okay, now 3 months from now, you're going to be doing your next follow-up scan. We want to make sure that you're maintaining that momentum to the next one. And you want to try to keep that similar 3 to then maybe 6 month schedule for as long as they, or at least until they get to a health status that they feel good about and they feel like they want to maintain. Once they get to the point that they say, my risk is low or at least manageable to a point that I'm comfortable with, I don't really care about getting to as perfect or as optimal as possible. I just want to minimize the bulk of my risk, which is totally fine for most people. Getting to that point and then now doing it perhaps on an annual basis or every 2 years is definitely reasonable. Now, generally we recommend that doing it at least once a year. And the reason for that is because, when you start going to every 2 years, you can actually make some pretty negative progress within that time frame. And so for someone that's very stable year in, year out, doesn't really matter. They can do it whenever it makes sense to them. They've got a good model for how they need to be executing behaviors to help maintain their health status. But if you're someone that's more variable in your health status, it's tough to maintain a consistent weight or at least within a tight boundary. And that you kind of go up and down with whether it's seasons or life events, being able to do it on a year-to-year basis to make sure that you're not getting too far outside of the bounds of what you've established as your kind of comfortable risk zone helps prevent things from getting too far away from where you are to where it's a much bigger undertaking to get back to that health status that you're comfortable with.
Awesome. Jorim says thank you to you. So Ravinda asks, what is your youngest and oldest age you have tested? So over here at Dexafit Asia, Jimmy has answered that our youngest is 19 and our oldest is 71, but I feel like the US side has more, right?
Yeah, I think probably, at least from what I'm aware of, maybe like 13 years old or so. And then the oldest, I don't know off the top of my head, certainly in the 80s, potentially in the 90s as well. We've got quite the range. Now, when it comes to individuals that are younger, it is actually a really good opportunity, particularly from the time that they hit puberty to anytime after that, to start getting those baseline scans, because it gives us an idea of, okay, when they hit puberty, this is how their body has now developed as they reach their peak maturity, and then now tracking how that progresses through time. Generally before puberty, it's a little bit more difficult, or at least less valuable, at least in cases of most people. But if it's a really obese child, then it can be advantageous there. But at least prior to puberty, things are just changing so rapidly that any particular scan at that point doesn't really give you that much to go off of, unless they're specifically struggling with obesity from a very young age, where it might be helpful to get them back on track. But from just a very general health preventative standpoint, looking at from the time that they hit puberty to after that is really where that sweet spot window opens up.
So I guess a follow-up question that everyone might have, right, is whether it's safe for an individual who is young to do the Dexafit test. So for example, like DEXA scan has radiation, and things like that.
Yeah, so to give you an idea of what the radiation typically is from a scan, most people aren't familiar with these terms, but so the term that's generally used is something called generally gray, GRAY, but in terms of a DEXA, they use what's called microgray, which is just a very small amount of that. So a DEXA scan is usually about 1/2 to 1 microgray, which is equivalent to, in more observable terms, it's called equivalent to 4 bananas, or a banana equivalent dose. And the reason that something like banana is used is because there's a specific isotope of potassium called potassium 40 that has a regular radioactive decay, which produces ionizing radiation, that is within your body when you eat the banana. And 4 bananas is equivalent roughly to the radioactive dose from a DEXA scan, right? Which says more about how low the DEXA scan is in radiation than how high a banana is. Sleeping next to somebody in bed gives you a radiation dose. Just being outside gives you a background radiation dose. So perhaps the easiest way to understand it is that being in an airplane for an hour at altitude is about equivalent to 1 DEXA scan. So it's a very manageable dose, very small. Living at high altitude can often be the equivalent of several thousand DEXA scans per year. So it's very low radiation. And then to go back to the CT example, a CT scan that's often used for coronary artery disease is often roughly equivalent between 25,000 to 250,000 DEXA scans, but in a single dose. So that's where you start to get to levels of radiation exposure that do become meaningful and do meaningfully increase your risk of cancer as a result of the radiation.
Awesome. So basically, if you're able to eat 4 bananas, you're able to do a DEXA scan.
Right.
Okay. Right. So Ravida has one last question. I believe that would be the last question for the summit today. How can you help our society? I believe that Ravida feels that our goal as Dexafit Asia is Dexafit as a whole is very ambitious, that we want to help the health status of the whole world. Yeah. And so he asked, how can we actually help our society, considering that there are different individuals in different health status, and at the end of the day, even if we are priced in an affordable level, there is a certain wealth consideration to be made.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that touches on that equitable access piece that I touched on. So one of the things that we're really excited about is, with our machine learning and AI, be able to expand those capabilities to not require Dexafit testing specifically, right? Now, you won't get the accuracy that comes with doing those tests, but it gives you some level of predictability based on demographic data, and then potentially just blood labs, or maybe just blood pressure, and a couple of components that are much cheaper oftentimes for people to get access to. And in the future, potentially being able to take just pictures of your body with your camera, things like that. So being able to use artificial intelligence to take everything that we've learned from our population of individuals across the globe based on DEXA and VO2 max testing, among other tests, and being able to translate that into a lower specificity and predictive power, but broader access capability. So being able to say, all right, here's someone's demographic data, here's their height, weight, some other components that are easy to access. Here's your disease prediction based on those factors, right? And so that allows you now to go to communities that do not have the resources of wealthier countries, but still give them some level of disease understanding based on their current metrics. And as costs continue to come down with the specific equipment, because as adoption increases, the cost of these systems will go down because there's higher demand, which reduces the production cost. Because most of these equipment manufacturers, the number of units that are actually produced is usually only on the order of often several hundred to maybe several thousand per year, which in terms of manufacturing scale is very, very small. So you don't really get the economies of scale at those levels, but that will change based on large scale adoption. And again, the systems themselves right now aren't that expensive, but from a perspective of very low wealth countries, it's enough of a difference in cost that it actually matters. So being able to scale based on a much larger increase in demand gives you the ability to have larger economies of scale, reduce the cost, and then hopefully being able to expand that equipment infrastructure into these lower wealth countries.
Awesome. That is such a great answer. Yeah. So I guess at the end of the day, we are probably going to be using a mixture of what do you call it? A mixture of prediction data along with, you know, things like technology to help improve the life and quality of life of everyone using these predictive models that we are obviously in process of, right? Yeah. Yes, Ian, this will be on YouTube, but give me some time to actually record this and re-render it out. Yeah. Okay, I believe we have come to the end of our Dexafit Summit 2022. Thank you so much, Adam and Brendan, for joining me in for this summit and to share with everybody about you know, what Dexafit's all about, what's in store, what has been done before that, and really what's going on in future. I'm so happy to have you guys as my co-presenters today, and it has been a really enjoyable time. So if you can, everybody just pop in a thank you to Adam and Brendan, you know, just to give them a quick encouragement before we leave the room. And I thank you so much, guys. We will probably be sending all of you a quick email to thank you all and ask you for some feedback. Yeah. So I think we can all end here today. We probably overrun by a bit. Yeah, but I'm really, really thankful that some of you really stayed back to just listen to this little last bit. Yeah, Brendan must has been really, really enjoyable to listen to. All right. Okay. So we are gonna end over here. Thank you guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye.